It's a strange feeling, looking in the mirror and seeing someone you no longer recognize. I never thought I'd be the type of person to do what I did, to cross that line, to betray the one person I promised to love and cherish above all others. Yet here I am, on the other side of that line, grappling with the reality of what I've done. My name is Rachel, and I'm 26 years old. By most accounts, I'm what you'd call a good person. I've always prided myself on being honest, loyal, and caring. I come from a close-knit family, have a solid career as a director, and was, until recently, in what I thought was a strong marriage with my husband, David. But as life has a way of proving, appearances can be deceiving. What follows is my story, an honest, unflinching look at the decisions I made, the reasons behind them, and the consequences that have forever changed the course of my life. This is the other side of the coin, the cheater's perspective. David and I met when we were in our late 20s. He was charming, intelligent, and had a way of making me feel like I was the only woman in the world. Our relationship was easy from the start. We were two people who seemed perfectly suited for each other. We shared similar values, enjoyed the same hobbies, and had the same vision for our future. Within a year of dating, we were married. The early years of our marriage were filled with the kind of love and happiness you see in movies. We traveled, spent lazy Sundays in bed, and talked about everything under the sun. I remember feeling like I had won the lottery, that I had found my soulmate, the person I would grow old with. But as time went on, things began to change. We both became more focused on our careers, David as an architect and me as a director. The demands of our jobs meant that we spent less time together, and when we were together, our conversations often revolved around work. The passion that had once defined our relationship started to fade, replaced by routine and a growing sense of distance. We tried to reconnect. We went on vacations, had date nights, and made an effort to be more present with each other. But despite our best efforts, something was missing. It was as if the spark that had once burned so brightly between us had dimmed, and we didn't know how to reignite it. I began to feel lonely in my marriage. It wasn't the kind of loneliness that comes from being physically alone, but rather the kind that comes from being emotionally disconnected from the person you love. David and I still loved each other, but we had become more like roommates than partners. We coexisted, sharing a life but not really living it together. I tried to talk to David about how I was feeling, but those conversations never seemed to go anywhere. He would listen, nod, and say that he understood, but nothing ever changed. He was as distant as ever, consumed by his work, and I felt like I was slowly fading into the background of his life. I began to doubt myself, to wonder if I was asking for too much. Was it normal for marriages to lose their passion after a few years? Was I being unreasonable in wanting more? I didn't know the answers, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that I was missing out on something important. That's when I met Ethan. Ethan was a new hire at the company where I worked. He was younger than me by a few years, full of energy and enthusiasm. From the moment we met, there was a connection, a spark that I hadn't felt in a long time. We started working closely together on a project, and it didn't take long for our professional relationship to develop into something more. At first, it was just innocent flirting, playful banter, lingering glances, the kind of harmless interaction that happens in many workplaces. But as the weeks went by, I found myself looking forward to seeing Ethan, to the way he made me feel. He was attentive, funny, and made me feel like I was interesting, attractive, and desirable. I knew I was playing with fire, that I was crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed. But I couldn't stop myself. The attention Ethan gave me was like a drug, something I craved more and more. It filled the void that had been growing in my marriage, the emptiness that I had tried so hard to ignore. One evening, after a long day at work, Ethan and I went out for drinks. It was supposed to be just a casual outing, a way to unwind after a stressful day. But as the night wore on, the conversation became more personal, more intimate. We talked about our lives, our dreams, our disappointments. I found myself opening up to Ethan in a way that I hadn't with David in years. The night ended with a kiss. It was unexpected, impulsive, and completely wrong. But in that moment, I didn't care. The thrill of it, the rush of excitement, was like nothing I had felt in years. I knew I was crossing a line, but I didn't want to stop. That kiss was the beginning of an affair that would last for several months. It started slowly, stolen moments at work, secret texts, the occasional lunch that turned into something more. But as time went on, the affair became more serious. We began meeting in secret, spending weekends together, lying to our spouses about where we were and what we were doing. With Ethan, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. He made me feel desired, appreciated, and valued. He filled the emotional void that had been growing in my marriage, and for a while, I convinced myself that what I was doing was justified. I told myself that I deserved to be happy, that I wasn't hurting anyone, that it was just a temporary escape from the loneliness I felt with David. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. The guilt was always there, lurking in the background, tainting the happiness I felt with Ethan. I knew I was betraying David, the man who had loved and supported me for years. I knew I was risking everything, my marriage, my reputation, my sense of self, for a relationship that could never last. The affair with Jake was intoxicating. It was everything that my life with Tom wasn't: exciting, unpredictable, and full of passion. When I was with Jake, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. I felt like the woman I used to be, before the responsibilities of life had weighed me down. We would meet in secret, stealing moments whenever we could. Sometimes it was just a quick coffee in a hidden cafe, other times it was entire afternoons spent in his apartment, lost in each other. The thrill of the affair only heightened the intensity of our connection. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew I was betraying Tom, the man who had loved and supported me for years. But in those moments with Jake, I didn't care. I was consumed by the passion, the excitement, the feeling of being desired. I told myself that I deserved this, that I needed this, that it was just a way to reclaim a part of myself that I had lost. But the guilt was always there, lurking in the background. Every time I came home to Tom, every time I kissed my children goodnight, I felt like a fraud. I was living a double life, and the weight of that deception was crushing me. But I couldn't stop. I was addicted to the way Jake made me feel, and I didn't know how to let go. The affair continued for several months, and during that time, the distance between Tom and me only grew. I became more withdrawn, more secretive, and Tom noticed. He started asking questions, sensing that something was wrong, but I always had an excuse. I told him I was just stressed, that work was overwhelming, that I was tired. But one night, it all came crashing down. Tom confronted me, telling me he knew something was going on, that he could feel me slipping away from him. The look in his eyes was one of desperation, of a man who was trying to hold on to something that was already slipping through his fingers. I broke down. The guilt, the shame, the weight of the lies, it all became too much. I confessed everything, telling Tom about the affair, about how lost I had felt, about how I didn't know who I was anymore. I told him that I was sorry, that I didn't mean to hurt him, but I didn't know how to stop. The look on Tom's face when I told him the truth will haunt me for the rest of my life. He was devastated, shattered by the betrayal of the woman he had loved for so long. He didn't yell, he didn't get angry, he just looked at me with this deep, profound sadness, as if he had lost something he could never get back. He didn't say much that night. He just told me he needed time to think, and he left the house. I didn't know if he would come back, and for a moment, I wasn't sure if I wanted him to. I was so full of self-loathing, of regret, that I didn't feel like I deserved his forgiveness. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Tom and I barely spoke, and when we did, it was strained, awkward. He stayed with a friend for a while, trying to process everything I had told him. I didn't blame him for needing space, but it was agonizing, not knowing if our marriage could survive this. I started seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I had done what I did, trying to make sense of the choices that had led me to this point. Therapy helped me see the deeper issues, the feelings of inadequacy, the fear of losing myself in the roles of wife and mother, the craving for something more. But understanding my actions didn't make them right. Tom eventually came home, but things between us were different. The trust that had once been the foundation of our marriage was gone, shattered by my betrayal. We decided to go to couples therapy, but it was clear that the road to healing would be long and difficult. So what made me cheat? It's a question I've asked myself 1,000 times. Was it the excitement, the passion, the need to feel desired? Was it the loneliness, the feeling of being lost in a life that no longer felt like my own? The truth is, it was all of those things and more. I cheated because I was unhappy, because I felt like I was losing myself, because I was too afraid to confront the problems in my marriage. I cheated because I wanted to escape, to feel something different, something more. But in the end, all I found was pain. The affair didn't fix anything. It didn't make me happier, it didn't fill the void I was feeling. It only created more problems, more pain, more heartache. I lost the trust of the man I loved, the stability of my marriage, and the respect I had for myself. The thrill of the affair was a mirage, a false promise of something better, but in the end, it was nothing but ashes. Tom and I are still trying to rebuild our marriage, but it's a long and painful process. There are days when I wonder if we'll ever get back to where we were, if the wounds will ever fully heal. But I'm committed to doing the work, to being honest, and to making things right, even if it takes years. I've learned the hard way that there are no shortcuts to happiness, no easy fixes to the problems in a marriage. The excitement I craved was a distraction from the real work I needed to do on myself and my relationship. And now, I have to live with the consequences of my choices. What made me cheat? It was a combination of things, but in the end, it was my own weakness, my own fear, my own inability to face the truth. I can't change what I did, but I can learn from it, and try to be better for myself, for Tom, and for our family. It's a long road ahead, but I'm walking it, one step at a time.